The Handmaid's Tale, published in 1985, was written by Canadian author Margaret Atwood and is a highly intricate and complex narrative. It has been created from a nuance of historical and political contextual influences, which allows the audience to create a profound appreciation for both the characterization of individuals as well as its intricate plot. The Handmaid's Tale is an example of a speculative fiction, as it imagines an alternate world not vastly different to our own. The Handmaid's Tale takes place in a dystopian setting known as Gilead, a state ruled by a conservative government that views women as state property. Gilead is a society which is facing an extremely high decline of birth rates due to a nuclear incident. The story follows a handmaid known as Offred and her recordings of daily life, as well as frequent flashbacks of her past life. Handmaids are assigned to powerful men known as commanders, as well as their infertile wives. Handmaids are for the sole purpose of procreation, surrogacy, and then eventually being cast aside. Margaret Atwood has developed this narrative and has been influenced by a variety of patterns and trends she observed in her lifetime. She essentially likens the text as a consequence of these past events. Margaret Atwood has constructed the text from the influence of many notable events in history. This allows the novel to evolve throughout time and still maintain its relevance in our modern society. Margaret Atwood was born on the 18th of November 1939 and has experienced a large proportion of major historical and political events of the 20th century. This has allowed her to create The Handmaid's Tale, with underlying motifs and based off countless contextual influences. One major influence which she has heavily incorporated into the text being the treatment of women in Gilead and its links to the feminist movement in the 1960s. When reading The Handmaid's Tale, it's clearly evident that gender problems and elements of feminism are essential in both the book's construction and its reception from the audience. Margaret Atwood is well known for her feminist views, and rather than assert her dominant views on the subject, she allows the audience to find a deeper meaning and raise questions of the text, which directly affect our modern society. Feminism started as a women's liberation movement in the 1960s. Main purposes being to empower women and the belief that women are capable of accomplishing the same things as men. Feminism has been founded on the case that both men and women are equally as superior as one another. Many female and male authors throughout the 20th and 21st century have created narratives and literature supporting the feminist attitudes and values. Margaret Atwood is publicly well known as a feminist writer, but has created this text in a way which directly opposes and crushes traditional feminist values. Atwood has stated that although she is a feminist herself, she is also a fair and astute observer of society. Margaret Atwood has clearly portrayed these observations in the novel through the representation of Offred's mother and Moira. This has helped her to document the strengths and shortcomings of the feminist movement in society both currently and in the past. Moira and Offred's mother are the main characters of the text who appear to represent the more traditional feminist values and attitudes. Offred's mother is characterized to be more of a traditional activist in the 1960s, while Moira represents a more modern personality as a lesbian feminist. Both of these characters start off as the novel's strongest and most positive feminist representations, although Margaret Atwood intentionally destroys their representation by the end of the novel, as well as destroying the audience's hope of powerful female representation. There is a lot of unknown information about Offred's mother. She was known as a feminist radical before the creation of Gilead, someone who marched for reproductive rights and anti-rape demonstrations, and as someone who helped take place in mass burnings of pornography. She was a single parent, as her and her feminist group were against relationships with men. After portraying Offred's mother as this powerful feminist, Atwood eventually reveals to both the audience and to Offred that her mother was eventually labeled as an unwoman, and that Offred should hope that she's dead, rather her live as a former radical who cleans up toxic waste as a broken and dying woman. Moira was Offred's closest college friend, a bold, opinionated, and queer feminist. When Moira first arrives, she presents her rebellious attitude by directly ignoring the aunt's orders and communicating with Offred in the bathroom. Eventually, when Moira manages to flee from the center, she is pursued and is captured by the Eyes. Moira is given the option to be sent to the colonies or to become a prostitute, and opts for the latter. She knew that humiliation and the loss of her identity was better than a death sentence. After this incident, Offred is eventually led to speculate about the fate of Moira. That is, until they see each other once again at Jezebel's, which is a secret club for high-ranking officials. This is where Offred is met before this new Moira. It's clear to both her and the audience that the authorities have fully committed and succeeded in destroying the feminist spirit of Moira. Moira has become a prostitute, dressed in degrading mock Playboy bodysuits, and exchanges her bodies for tiny slices of freedom in cigarettes and pleasure with other prostitutes. In her highly complex and nuanced speculative fiction, Atwood consciously destroys all the hopes which rode upon these two characters for the entire female gender. Under the strain of the dominant males, the two most powerful female protagonists falter. In the end, the writing style of Margaret Atwood is distinct from that of the original feminist authors. It's clear that in the speculative narrative, Atwood deliberately sets herself apart from these authors. Rather than incorporate the typical and positive contextual influences of the feminist movement from the late 1960s, she highlighted the negative and naivete which was presented at the time of the movement. Atwood remained unbiased and has effortlessly observed all sides of these events and raises questions to the audience. Atwood has created this unusual writing style to change the perspective of all the readers, basically screaming to them that they must understand all the sides of contextual influences which have led to the creation of this narrative. She displaces her audience to think that The Handmaid's Tale is meant to support the typical feminist values and attitudes, as the whole story is narrated by a female and through a point of view. Although there is a deeper meaning to the whole story than that, it is a highly backwards and open-minded view which encompasses the whole context of feminism. Like everything else in the novel, feminism has both good and bad elements.